This is the rubbish that the Boris graph kind of imposes on the environment. I mean, this is the pack of rubbish that is foisted along with the Saturday edition of the Boris graph. And it is an absolutely criminal attack on the environment. There is nothing, absolutely nothing in these. How many of them? So this is the one about the homeless, so-called homeless charity crisis, asking for donations. We shall come to that. This is the so-called magazine of the Saturday. And then this is the pack of shopping rubbish. And there is a thing from the legal and general on the thing called power of us. It's not power of us, the people. It's a complete, absolute lie. People don't have the power. They're being lied to. And this expensive paper containing how many pages? This is the thing called luxury. I mean, anyone from Mars or anyone from outside of the UK would think that 10 million people, 10 to 15 million people who are suffering from poverty and lack of necessary income, basic income, and health service, that none of this exists. This is like the Financial Times on the Saturday saying how to spend it. And the Financial Times distributors shortchange the people who buy the cover price of, pay the cover price of £4, which I did yesterday. They didn't have that. So the reference to what the contents were could not be cited yesterday. And we didn't broadcast an edition on Saturday. That's a different aspect. But the Financial Times didn't have that magazine. So it costs £4 for this Saturday, 5 December and Sunday, 6 December edition. UK £4, Channel Islands £4, Republic of Ireland £4. Now, this is surely charging too much from the ordinary seeker of reference materials. So this is the Financial Times, and it does shortchange readers, as I said, or buyers from the outlets quite regularly. And then the features on there is a thing called House and Home, FT Weekend. This is a lie as well. But it's based on the lie about the complete corruption and the criminal operation that goes on under the headline of housing. And these people, crisis, are carrying they're distributing this one through the Mail on Sunday as well, Mail on Sunday magazine. And these are from another world. These are not from the East End of London. And the Torygraph has got the same crisis in the Sunday Torygraph, that is. Boris Graf, Tory Graf, and got too many items of rubbish attacking the environment. And clearly there is no account in the papers, Fleet Street papers, of what happens to the garbage that they produce themselves. And they've got a whole promotion for Dido Harding. This is the kind of nepotism and corruption that is part of the Boris Johnson cabal. And then on the Sunday, inside your brilliant 8-page travel on Sunday. I mean, all of this is completely in denial. And what they're doing is they're hiding the failures of the health service by superimposing a narrative that is completely false and untruthful. It is a hateful narrative, which is what created the Brexit kind of stampede by the gullibles. And the gullibles are completely at a loss now as to what Brexit was all about. And they will be even more at a loss as things get worse. And there is a stupid kind of spin for Hancock, saying that or claiming that vaccine will loosen tiers, 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 the kind of levels of the lockdown before end of March. How does he know that? How does he know that? Because the vaccine itself remains very much contentious. Contrary to what the lying Fleet Street is parading as the conspiracy theorists who oppose the lying claims about the vaccine. Scientific evidence does not exist to substantiate anything like the claims that they're making every day about the vaccine. And they got this thing. What these racists in Fleet Street do, they don't examine the evidence of racism, and they don't examine the existence of racism. They don't acknowledge racism in the past, in the recent past, or currently. So they kind of drop it as a infantile kind of trigger for the gullibles to get outraged at the kind of audacity of anyone who opposes racism. So these Barnardos, which is Barnardos, is a children's charity. They say that it's the biggest children's charity in the UK. Barnardos is telling people to check their white privilege. Now this suggests that white people are being disenfranchised by even this kind of question being raised, and that white people suddenly cease to be in their positions of privilege everywhere at every level. It is completely, absolutely misleading, and it is a racist kind of tactic. And they're, of course, back at it. They are kind of blaming the EU generally, and the French in particular this weekend anyway. All right, there is a piece in the Sunday Boris graph on page 3. And they've got a piece about the murders, mass murders of animals, including by a woman called Cambridge educated lawyer. And they're saying that Cambridge educated lawyer revealed as top trophy hunter. Now, what is the point of referring to her Cambridge education? Are they saying that Cambridge education is a mantra, is a kind of secret dose that is injected into them while they're at Cambridge or are linked with Cambridge, and that their morality is established in them, ethics is established in them because they are linked with Cambridge or Oxford? There is another take on Cambridge. And this one is the Cambridge, the Duke of Cambridge and Duchess of Cambridge. And they're taking royal train on tour of thanks. What have they done? Are they imposing the obligation on the subjects that the subjects should give them thanks? For what? And there is another one about the pollution rising in low traffic neighborhoods. This is the kind of typical kind of normal contradiction and idiocy. Because they don't actually examine. They don't actually examine the full extent of the so-called low traffic areas created by local councils. And they've got a piece about Liverpool's elected mayor, Joe Anderson, being given bail, released on bail. Now, here is a brilliant confession. It's a kind of, how did they do this? This is what they keep doing. Lockerbie was kind of run as a keyword to instantly trigger hatred of Muslims. Although Muslims never had any knowledge of what happened at Lockerbie. And Muslims don't have anything to do with Libya or Libya's Gaddafi regime. It's not Muslims in the world that had anything to do with Gaddafi. It was the carefully constructed cabals of criminals who were lining up for Gaddafi's money and doing his tricks. But whether Gaddafi was at all interested in having this explosion caused is completely open to doubt. And now the Boris graph is saying that the CIA had a role. The CIA had a person who was handling the person who served as a key witness to the Lockerbie bombing. And that handler is saying, according to this report, that this key witness on the Lockerbie bombing had a history of making up stories. Now, extrapolate this to all the big kind of so-called Muslim terrorist kind of events, and you can find more like this story years after the heat has been taken off that particular trigger. So why is the kind of Sunday Boris Graf publishing this now? Why did the Fleet Street papers didn't publish the account that was given by the people who were the Libyans that were accused, but who completely denied any involvement whatsoever? They didn't publish anything like a fraction of their denials. And now they're saying, and CIA, of course, is the trigger word. If the CIA says something, then it has got exceptional credibility to the people in Britain and in Fleet Street and the entirety of the lines of Muslim haters. And here is Esther McBee. Now, Esther McBee is, of course, against the poor people, against the kind of migrants, and she's a zealot. And she is talking about Bernardo's out of line teaching white privilege. I mean, she would, of course, object to anyone talking about racism and the privilege that white people are given. And this Nigel Farage is saying, the headline with his name on it says, "I will put an end to the green roads madness." So anything green is mad. And he is, of course, the person, he claims himself, who brought about Brexit. And there is a boastful editorial saying that the UK has stood firm throughout EU talks. There's a cartoon about Santa Claus sitting in his chair and talking to a child and telling a child, and if you are very good, you might be allowed out of tier 3. And the child says, "Look, I hate to break it to you, but that's just made up nonsense." Now that is really the summary of the Boris Johnson cabal's propaganda, and also about the kind of over-the-top lies that are being peddled as serious news by the Boris Graf Sunday and Boris Graf on weekdays. And all the nasties of the Brexit are given space in the Boris Graf. Daniel Hannan, the nastiest MEP that ever was, and the liar, is there also. And he is comparing lockdown with the kind of divide on Brexit. They have actually subsumed Daniel Hannan, Nasty Nigel Farage, and others have moved on because they cannot justify a single kind of new utterance they can make about Brexit. So they are moved on to kind of exploit and misappropriate the next topical kind of item. Nasty Faraj is doing this on the basis of the news release about the green kind of local roads that are not producing the kind of expected environmental benefits according to this report. So he jumped on that one. It's not like he's reflecting and doing any research over months of his own. He just exploits the headline of the moment and grabs it. And the lying Fleet Street media, too glad to give him the space. And the Sunday Mirror is, of course, promoting the vaccine. And the Sunday Mirror is doing the vaccine as part of Keir Starmer's kind of policy of collusion with Boris Johnson. But the actual headline that is on page 6 should have been on the front page. The disabled to lose £2 billion in Tory benefit freeze. I mean, that is a lie. Because that should be headed, the disabled and the poor and the most vulnerable are to be deprived of 2 billion more in cuts to benefits. But the Sunday Mirror or the Daily Mirror doesn't recognize the actual impact on people's lives and people's rights that poverty created like this has on millions of people in this country. Now it has got a small item underneath that item about Starmer being back into isolation. And they've got Dennis McShane, the former MP, has got a piece on this Sunday Mirror saying Churchill's dream can triumph, ... once nightmare ends. So it's farewell, arrivederci, of Wiedersehen, adieu, and as we hurtle towards a precipice of which friendships and economies will plummet, faster than a shopping trolley shunted over the white cliffs. The toxic UK-EU relationship is summed up perfectly. Nobody wants a no deal. Now, where is the Churchill thing here? Winston Churchill declared in 1948, "We hope to see a Europe where men of every country will think as much of being a European as belonging to their native land, without losing the love and loyalty of their birthplace." How ironic! It is Churchill's #1 fan and bargain basement impersonator Boris Johnson driving the nail into its coffin. When we did join in 1973, it was without enthusiasm. On January 1 that year, a new dawn awaited, and polls found the nation bitterly divided. Sounding familiar? But prime ministers did want to the trade benefits and all the rest of it. Now, there is a piece on the same kind of center pages, 2-page spread. Brexit talks, the prime minister has one final throw of the dice and one last chance to avoid no deal. That's the Sunday Mirror. But it's absolute rubbish, because they're not telling what is the reason for this kind of endless, hysteric headline about doom and gloom and whatever. And there is a long piece about this woman called Esther. backpacker Esther Dingley. Her aunt has said that she probably has been kidnapped. And there is a page full of a mental health charity shuts after 12.5 million funding axed. And they've got a picture of Bruno, Frank Bruno. Who is featured as part of the campaign about mental health. So West Streeting, who is a fan of Keir Starmer and sworn kind of strategic plant against the Labour Party, doing anything in accordance with the Labour Party's founding aims and objectives, is appearing as a guest columnist in the Sunday Mirror. And he's promoting Elton John, feeding off. It's like parasites feeding off one another. And this is a Daily Star on Sunday talking about the jungle. And I've got on page 2, which should be on page 1. They're saying the best friend of Boris Johnson's fiancée, Kerry Simmons, has been given a £350 a day government job without being advertised. Now, £350 a day would be like what? It's more than 2 weeks' rent for the average person, tenant, who is facing eviction because of arrears. So it's £350 a day. It's nearly £2,000 a week if she works 5 days. And why is Bernanke saying that he started crying from day one? And we'll be coming to that in a minute. Nimco Ali was made an advisor on tackling violence against women and girls, despite no competitive application process. Now, this is the secret out at last, not just the fact that she is Kerry Simmons' best friend. That is the news as well. Now, suddenly she appeared on the mainstream platforms like the BBC and the Sky News as a kind of commentator, suddenly out of nowhere. And everything she said amounted to absolute rubbish. And I'm talking about the last kind of 2 years, over which this person has been paraded as a commentator by the BBC and the Sky News, apart from others. And now it becomes clear that she must have been pushed, or her case must have been made by unattributable sources to the managers and the commissioners on the mainstream broadcasting networks. And Bernanke says that he started crying because he missed his children while in the jungle. And there is a man who is pictured I mean, I cannot even say the things. He's a mass murderer of animals, and there is no word for prosecuting him. And there is a thing called Clowning Street. The British people don't trust Boris Johnson on pandemic. At last. And there is a tearful kind of piece by this stupid Daily Star on Sunday. He's agonized over house move. And what's the Bini said, I have a film production company and we have 100 million investment fund. Now how can he be agonizing about house move? Does he know what housing loss and agony are? He of course doesn't. But our concern is about the Daily Star on Sunday. These morons don't have any context, no understanding, and no idea about the millions of people suffering from robbery of their housing rights and facing evictions right now. What kind of headline is that? I mean, shouldn't she be assumed to be getting the vaccine ahead of anyone else? So when I said that this is the world exclusive, Khoodeelaar campaign world exclusive diagnosis of the British press, we mean Fleet Street, which is the London-based, London-centric, Little English, Little England agenda peddling pack of lies. Let's say currently there are 10. Kind of weekdays, there are 10. On the weekends, there are 9 because of the FT publishing Saturday and Sunday together. So on average, let's say there are 10 titles. And that is not including the evening, no standard, and the Metro. The Metro is the morning, and evening, no standards is supposedly the evening. And there is another one called the City AM. Excluding those 3, the ones that are regularly available on weekdays, there are 10 of them, with the qualification about the Financial Times as frequency. And the diagnosis is not done by anybody else. No platform, no broadcasting outlet does this and has not done anything like this. And the Khoodeelaar campaign has been part of the movement defending the community in the East End of London. Now that movement is decades old, and it predates by decades the appearance of the internet, where we are broadcasting this one, and the appearance of most of the accessible kind of television programs or channels, because the internet has actually altered the accessibility of so much of what used to be terrestrial television, which would not be accessible without the access provided by the internet technology. So we have been, the movement defending the community in the East End of London, have been diagnosing the British media, the Fleet Street and the BBC. And we say BBC because we started doing it before there was a Sky network. And we started doing this way before there was an ITV kind of equivalent. The ITV had, during the 1970s, the ITV had a thing called What the Papers Say. ITV and BBC have kind of alternately and hosted this kind of slot. And the two most kind of remembered by our campaign as hosts are Brian Inglis, INGLIS, Brian Inglis, and Paul Foote. There were others, but these two remain among the more remembered presenters. Now, at the time that they were presenting the slot, I mean, most of the kind of broadcast used to be on Thursdays. At the time they were presenting, that was the only slot doing anything like that. And then came Channel 4, and Channel 4, into the early years of its broadcasting, started in the 1980s, had a kind of similar thing and had a right to reply kind of thing. We shall come to discuss, diagnose right to reply in Channel 4 and update on it in due course later, not necessarily this edition. So the actual channel that, or the slot, maybe 15 minutes, that looked at the newspapers, Fleet Street mainly, was called What the Papers Say. And then it became disowned. I mean, it was shifted or shafted, if you like, around. And it wasn't really given a permanent slot by anybody. It did the tour, being chucked out of by the ITV and then by the BBC, and it was hosted briefly, I think, and I have to check that one, by Channel 4 itself. And what we noticed throughout was that it wasn't anything like the rigorous analysis that it should have been. It could have been, and it ought to have been. And it had no excuse for not being so, because the evidence is what it could rely on, and the evidence was absolutely undeniable of the corruption by Fleet Street, the collusion by Fleet Street, complicity by Fleet Street in covering up the lies and the distortions and the criminality and the inventions and the fakery of not only the British government, but also British institutions, other institutions and agencies, right across the board. So what we are doing, Khoodeelaar campaign, is covering the areas that have not been covered before, for the reference, for the evidence, because the evidence exists undeniably, because we are talking about the printed contents on the one hand, and the contents have got two sides. One is the facts of what they actually contain, and one is the fact of what they leave out. So one side is the contents and the other side is the left out. And I've got this one, which is remember, this is the one that is the Sunday Times has got, and we shall be talking about Joe Anderson in Liverpool in a minute. And they're saying this is a fast track 100 COVID-19 edition. And they're saying that just the job for a swift recovery. That's what they're claiming. And they've got Boris Johnson suitably, falsely kind of dressed up there to suit the propaganda line, to give the gullibles, the brainwashable people the idea that he is the man doing the job, getting it done. That is a pack of lies. He's got this hard hat in the insert, but this is completely false. And I've got a whole page almost, and it's the fast track 100. That is what they're calling it. So Britain has got a fastest growing private companies. So they've got 100 companies that are fastest growing. Now, just like the Financial Times, this is about money, this is about business, but this is not about poverty. This is not about robbery, and this is not about homelessness. This is not about housing, kind of robbery of housing and homelessness, degenerate estates and sink estates, and the corruption and criminality done by the local councils in creating housing corruption and criminality, doing housing corruption and criminality. And they've got everything is unbelievable hype. Nobody should take this as a serious kind of informative, fact-based journalism. This home thing is a complete con. And they have no shame. They've got continental drift. How to beat the Brexit deadline and move to Europe. Can you believe this? They're admitting that Brexit would be bad news for people who want to move to Europe. On housing. How can they be doing this? 4 years they've been kind of parading this lie about against free movement in Europe, within the EU. And now they're saying that Brexit would stop them moving to Europe. So they must hurry up. How brazen can they be? How shameless, how illogical, how corrupt and criminal, and how unaccountable. Now, this is a stupid headline as well, again, about Brenda. The headline is completely stupid. It says, Queen to let us know when she has had a vaccine. Why should she let them know when she has had a vaccine? I mean, what kind of fantasy world is it? Why should anyone need to know that Brenda has had the vaccine? What does it mean? She is not connected biologically, physically with anyone else. So what difference will it make what happens to her? I mean, if the effect of the vaccine is one way, will this be read as evidence that everyone else will have the same effect? This is not scientific. And there is a very small cartoon by Newman, which is absolutely much better at explaining. It says, expecting Brexit to cure everything may be a bit premature. Now that is it. These Brexiteering liars are doing this. They're saying that Brexit will cure everything. And that is what the gullible millions have been fed. And there is a stupid headline which is really misleading because it says Johnson's cabinet colleagues back his no deal kind of move or option or preparation for no deal. Now they have been crying for no deal for 2 years. So why should it be treated as a news item? So where is Joe Anderson being asked to resign? Yes. So there is this one on the page 8. They got two pictures of Derek Hatton. One is the one that they published on the online, and we have posted on our Twitter and Facebook accounts the same picture. And the other one is when Hatton kind of protested against Neil Kinnock's stupid speech at the Labour Party conference in 1985. On that one, we immediately supported Derek Hatton's protest against Neil Kinnock, and we still support that protest. But that doesn't mean that we support Derek Hatton on other things, and we most certainly do not support Kinnock on anything. Even when this morning we have tweeted that it was Kinnock who expelled Hatton from the Labour Party in the late 1980s. We said that as a contrast, as a contextual point about the fact that somebody who has been out of the Labour Party for more than 30 years, to maintain such a close relationship with Joe Anderson, the Labour mayor, elected mayor of Liverpool, is unacceptable. And it is totally wrong of Anderson and Hatton to have been so close. And they've got a piece on the news page 21, about a missing British teen found in a camp for ISIS brides with son aged 3 years. It can now be revealed that she was persuaded to travel to Syria and married an ISIS fighter from Cardiff, with whom she had 2 sons, Faris and Tala. Faris was killed in a coalition airstrike that also injured his father, but Talha 3 remains with his mother at the Kurdish-run Al-Hol detention camp in northeast Syria. It is probably the same detention place where the Tower Hamlets ex-schoolgirl, Shamima Begum is still based. And they've got 2 pages against Macron about Brexit and promoting Johnson. And there is a headline which is saying something that is nearer the truth. Not the whole truth, but nearer the truth. It says, superpowers playing dirty in fight to gain vaccine supremacy. So it's talking about the USA, of course. And Rod Little is talking about women should be sent to do a man's job. and there is a woman, anti-Iranian. It says, Trump had Tehran on the ropes. Now our hope is gone. And Camilla Long doing a stupid piece again that the other morons have done, posing as a feminist, supporting the demand for Eton School to allow girls in. That is stupid. And Matthew Said, the completely corrupt, self-seeking, kind of mixed race moron, is doing a suitable PR for capitalism. And they've got a promotional piece for the big thief, Philip Green. So that these papers, the Sunday papers, 14 pounds 60 pence, I think they cost, cover price. They are not running anything that should constitute the truth at all. I mean, the fact that it has been the Fleet Street literally copy scripted lines is evident in the use of this dice. Boris's one last drop dice before number 10. I mean, this is what has been used by the other papers in Fleet Street about this so-called kind of uncertainty about the negotiations over Brexit. And they are shamelessly promoting racistly this Kate and Wills. And there is more attacks on the Eton School head teacher. And the Mail on Sunday is full of propaganda for the BBC Strictly Dancing and for the High Streets with Nigel Havers. And it's against the Crown, the so-called documentary about the monarchy, which the Fleet Street is actually condemning the Crown every day according to the wishes of the Crown, the monarchy. and they're looking for any excuse, any angle to discredit the crown. Not that I am or our campaign in any way has any kind of interest in taking a position, except to observe the sickness of the Fleet Street, which is nothing but an extension of the establishment. And we said this during this kind of part of this first part of today's diagnosis, in order to inform anyone watching this for the first time or anyone wondering what are the considerations, what are the purposes, what are the aims of this diagnosis. And the aim, main aim, primary aim, and long-term aim is to tell the truth. And that is because the Fleet Street papers are not telling the truth, nor is any of the commentator. Those who are given guest appearances, like the Mirror Group has given West Treating, are given a spot to gain some money or whatever, but not introduce anything truthful. West Treating an MP, right-wing MP, peddling Elton John is more than insulting to the rational thinking viewer or reader. I mean, West Treating giving the space to Elton John? How outrageously sick. How many people in the parliamentary constituency in East London that West Treating has the career in the name of? How many people are in low income? How many people are in dispute with the local council? How many people have got complaints about crime and antisocial behavior? How many people have got complaints against the local government ombudsman? How many people have got complaints against their MP? West Treating, has he got the courage? Has he got the honesty to even make a list of those? We don't expect West Treating to confess to his lying and fakery and opportunism, but he can make a list of complaints, categories of complaints that the people have. So what we are doing is giving a contextual diagnostic update on how the Fleet Street newspapers are telling lies and not telling the truth. And we are saying that this role by the Fleet Street papers is centrally relevant to the perpetuation of the majority of the people who are gullibles, whose brains are washed by these kind of lies. So the printed papers are lies and also subliminal lies, because, as I said, they tell the lies and also hide the truth. So that has a sublime kind of double impact on the brains of the gullibles and the majority of the brainwashed people. So you've got several Sunday papers carrying this thing. I don't know whether they're doing this as a free thing or whether they're doing this as part of the advertisements, maybe reduced rate. This is the one, and it's the envelope that is carrying the message from the, what is it called? It's a registered charity. It's called Crisis. And it says quite clearly that it's registered with the fundraising regulator. And it says, thank you for helping someone who's homeless this Christmas. And it has got there is a picture of a man, a white man, and it has got an alleged quote from him. His name is given as Phil, and he is saying in the quote, without crisis, that is the name of the organization, I would have been isolated on my own. Now, this is a long statement by them, and we shall diagnose this one in due course, not in this minute. And it is full of propaganda for this crisis outfit. And it has got, yes, I want to help someone like Phil this Christmas. I enclose 28.22 pence, 28 pound 22 pence, one gift, and 56 pound 44 pence, two gifts, and 282 pounds 20 pence, 10 gifts, other amounts. And it has got all the bureaucratic things sorted. UK taxpayer, non-UK taxpayer, gift aid, and all that. And the thing is signed by a person called Ian Richards, head of crisis Christmas team. And it is saying, this is the list of things that the gift of a crisis Christmas will give someone who is homeless access to, 1, a place to stay, 2, friendship and support from volunteer befrienders, number 3, essential food and festive treats, number 4, phone and online counseling, number 5, Christmas activity packs including arts and crafts, games and quizzes. The next one is fitness and well-being programs. Next one is advice on housing, employment and benefits. Now, how dare they? They're completely lying. Next one is year-round support, including training and education. And the last one is the chance to leave homelessness behind for good. Now, these people are doing business. Crisis is one of the criminal bureaucracies that is thriving in Britain at the expense of people who are pushed into homelessness and are kept there. Crisis was in serious dispute in Tower Hamlets a few years ago, and especially over the behavior of its then kind of face or name, a woman with a West Bengal kind of connection, parentage. Either her father is West Bengali and her name was a Ghosh. and they had an operation based at the Commercial Street, London E1 area. We shall do an update on the crisis and the behavior in relation to tar hamlets a few years ago. In due course, we shall not be doing it this minute, but we shall be doing it in due course. Now, the newspapers are, of course, carrying this in their magazine kind of supplements, this appeal from crisis at Christmas. And they're not doing it as news. They're not doing it as a report. They're doing it as a business operation. It's an advertisement. It's an advertising campaign by the Crisis, the charity. Now, how much money they actually get, let me check if it is available. All right, now this is the entry on Wikipedia, says that it was founded in 1967. And the focus, it says, is delivering services to and campaigning for change on behalf of single homeless people in the UK. Now, that is absolutely unjustifiable because it hasn't. It has claimed, but it hasn't campaigned. According to Crisis, the charity was founded in 1967 in response to the shocking Ken Loach film, Kathy Come Home, shown the previous year, that is 1966, and a publicity campaign led by reforming conservatives William Shearman, Ian MacLeod, highlighting the plight of homeless people. The drama documentary, Kathy Come Home, was first broadcast by the BBC the previous November, that is November 1966. Since the 60s, Crisis has evolved to meet the changing needs of single homeless people, campaigning for change and delivering services to help people find a route out of their homelessness across the UK. It was one of the 7 charities nominated by Prince Harry and Meghan Markle to receive donations in lieu of wedding presents when the couple married on 19th of May 2018. Crisis is the national charity for homeless people. We know that homelessness is not inevitable. We know that together we can end it. And it is absolutely full of utter, total lies about its role. And the criticism that we have against Crisis, this organization, applies equally to the organization Shelter, which makes a stronger claim to have been founded by the immediate kind of reaction or response to the same Ken Loach film, Kathy Come Home. In previous editions, we have discussed at length the racist liar Des Wilson of Shelter, and my particular exchange with him in the mid 1980s at an event held in the St. Bride's Church off Fleet Street in 1985. And my kind of accusation against Wilson that he was a racist and the shelter was a racist organization was kind of challenged by the Daily Telegraphs. Then 1985, Boris Johnson wasn't even born, I mean, in any sense, publicly born, that is. And this idiot from the Telegraph said that he had watched me at the County Hall of the Greater London Council, where he had seen me confront the leadership of the GLC, Ken Lying Still Livingstone, as if my challenging Ken Lying Still Livingstone amounted to my having less credibility as an opponent, as a critic, as a commentator against the racist shelter and the racist Des Wilson. So anyone watching this now, 35 years later, should think about the length of time I have been diagnosing these criminals at every level. Not only the actual corrupt outfits like Shelter and Crisis, but the GLC, of course, and also the most ardent anti-Ken Livingstone and anti-Labour, the Daily Telegraph. Even that antagonism to the lying still Livingstone disappeared when it came to the Telegraph racist decision whether to confront me or to support me or back me. There was no way he was going to support me or back me. That's the divide. It was a divide created by his own depth of racist idiocy and ignorance and stupidity. Because everything I said against Ken Lying Still Livingstone has come true and was going to come true. And everything that the Daily Boris Graph now then said in the 1980s about Ken Livingstone and the GLC failed to materialize because they were motivated by the kind of stupid hatred of the left, so-called, and the GLC and the Labour Party, not basing their opposition to the GLC on evidence, far less on the needs and the rights of the people, ordinary people of London, that the Ken Lying Still Livingstone fronted cabal at the GLC was betraying. So the Boris Graph has not changed. It is as stupid now as it was 35 years ago. And in both contexts and both references, I am directly involved in unmasking its stupidity and ignorance. So I'm doing the diagnosis of the Torygraph and the Telegraph. Well, I've been doing it for longer, but in the context of the reference to the crisis, the homelessness charity crisis, I've been doing it for 35 years. And everything I've said about the coverage or the cover-ups of the reasons for so many people being denied housing, home, human rights has been true, factual, and absolutely tenable and urgent and rigorous, and within practical solution. In comparison with what I have been saying, what the Daily Torygraph, Boris Graph, the Guardian, the Mirror, the Daily Mail, and others have been saying has been lies. And nothing has changed in their kind of approach. They have not found any correlation, connection between the thing that causes something that is caused. The causation, the correlation, the actual decision of the problem creators, for example, the local councils. Because they don't want the right wing, the racist papers, like the Boris Club, like the Daily Mail, like the Sun, and the rest of Fleet Street, they don't want to identify the decision makers that cause the shortage in housing, homelessness. And behind this general kind of theme lies the fact that the United Kingdom, the government, the state, is treated as being impune, rather treated with impunity, let's say, from accountability, on the fact that the dozens, in this context, let's say the dozens, because there are actually, in detail, there are hundreds, but in the main, there are dozens of obligations that arise from the UK's status as an active signatory to dozens of international declarations, conventions, charters, agreements, and treaties. All of these have effect. All these obligations have effect on the quality of service, the quality of facilities, the quality of support that ordinary British person gets from the British state. So when millions of people are deprived of housing rights, human rights, hundreds of thousands are on the streets, homeless, and more than 1 million people are under threat of homelessness, of eviction, and millions of people are in poverty that prevents them from being able to pay the capitalist rent. This is something that cannot be solved by making donations like this crisis or the shelter is asking for. This can only be solved, and I'm saying this is part of the diagnosis. Nobody is saying that. Nobody else is saying that. None of the housing charities, so-called, is saying that. None of the members of the House of Peers who make outrageously unjustified and criminally sick-making claims that they understand the plight of the people in homelessness and under threat of housing human rights. The only way housing can begin to be solved as a problem, and homelessness with that one, is if housing is removed as a tool for making money. Housing cannot be treated as a business. Home cannot be a business as well. And the capitalism based on housing property is absolutely unacceptable, and it is a problem. And the reason why they have not been addressing the housing crisis is because they are lying, they are dishonest, and they are corrupt, and they don't want to lose the opportunity to steal and rob and loot millions of people. That is why so that is the Karl Marx's theory of surplus value comes in a different way. It is the surplus entitlements, surplus rights that they're robbing and looting, they're exploiting. So I'm updating Karl Marx. I have been doing it, but this one I'm doing this expressly in this form, in these words today as well. And there is no sign in the Labour Party that they understand that making statements against homelessness, against evictions, is not the problem solver. And this plug for crisis in the entry on Wikipedia says, since 1972, Crisis at Christmas has been offering food, warmth, companionship, and services to homeless people in London over the Christmas period. And it says, the project is run almost entirely by around 10,500 volunteers, making it the largest volunteer-led event in the UK. In 2016, about 4,600 homeless people come through the doors. All buildings used as Crisis at Christmas centers are temporarily donated. Services offered to homeless people at Christmas include internet access, entertainment, food and drink, healthcare, opticians, podiatry, dentistry, natural healing, and hairdressing. During the key winter period, Crisis at Christmas has centers in London, Edinburgh, Newcastle, Coventry, and Birmingham. Now, all of this is lies. For a start, where do the people go after Christmas? Do they go back to the holes, to the caves, to the jungles? Do they disappear under the channel? Into kind of channels that are underground, underwater, kind of links to the European kind of mainland, and to the surface during the Christmas. How idiotic! Because they are not treating these people as human beings. They're not treating them as worthy of having homes, having lives, and they are treating these people as having no life, which are protected by for example, this declaration, the European Convention of Human Rights. Whatever the grammar, because it has been changed, it was called for a long time European Convention for Protection, European Convention for the Protection of Fundamental Freedom and Rights. And they have changed it, and they have changed a kind of grammar as well. Whatever the grammar. The charter contained in the convention, the list, the articles, the crisis list that is contained in the Wikipedia entry. It leaves out all of those. It doesn't have any of the articles. So the entry is done openly, brazenly, in defiance, or by denying the duties and the obligations the UK state has to these people, whatever the number. If there are 10,500 volunteers in 1 year, one Christmas, then how many homeless people supposedly have they catered for during that particular Christmas crisis? They might be claiming, based on that kind of claim, they might be claiming that they have serviced at least 50,000 people or 40,000 homeless people across the particular region. How dare they? Where do these people go to after the Christmas? They are exaggerating and misstating the physical and the material and the emotional meaning and significance and application and reality for ordinary people of Christmas. They are misdesignating Christmas as a whatever number of days when the weather changes into a magical form and the environment becomes completely kind of like out of this world, and everything becomes sweet and glorious and whatever. That is not the case. Christmas is actually experienced as a propaganda, as a slogan. Nothing special happens when it comes to food, when it comes to sleep, when it comes to security, when it comes to housing and feeling at home. And there is nothing in the Fleet Street papers, either on Sunday or on a weekday, that actually even mentions this gap that I'm mentioning, I'm analyzing. And there is nothing in the proceedings of the House of Commons or the House of Peers that actually deals with what I am spelling out and articulating and explaining. And this is not even starting to talk about the role of the eviction courts, the county courts, and the role of the rest of the judicial bureaucracy, and the role of the local councils, which are the main causers of homelessness. And he's not even talking about the role of any of the leaders of the opposition, so-called, or when they were not leaders of the opposition. I mean, none of the Labour prime ministers has done anything to remotely represent what I have articulated and outlined today, let alone what I have been arguing for a long time. And I'm saying, and I'm asserting, that these people are doing the criminal job by leaving all these people out of the obligation to be accountable, to account for their jobs, for their roles in creating homelessness. None of the minutes of any of the London councils or English local borough councils or parish councils, whatever, none of the councils can say they have said anything like what I have said, even in this one single broadcast. And I have been diagnosing local councils for a very long time. Local councils in England, mainly. Now, the so-called left media, so-called, like the socialist workers, hasn't got anything different. Nor has the CPGB, Communist Party of Great Britain's, whatever the rearranged name of that outfit is, the CPGB's Morning Star I have to find the necessary money to subsidize them. Currently £1.20 per weekday issue and £1.50 for Saturday and Sunday edition. I don't like even picking up the paper, but I have to see it as evidence, the contents. And the contents are in defiance of all the claims that it is revolutionary. It says to people that they can help revolution by funding the Morning Star, and it has been perennially asking for money, and it doesn't change. It is completely the most corrupt kind of newspaper that you can imagine. It hasn't got anything there except scripted slogans. It has got no human story, nothing from the communities. Now, if that is the picture of a society under communist revolution, then there wouldn't be any human being there. They would do what Chairman Mao did. They would get rid of millions of people. And there is, of course, no news about China's treatment of the Uyghur people and the other people that the Chinese Communist Party has targeted. There is no news in the Morning Star about any corruption by any of the elected mayors in East London or anywhere else. So the Morning Star apart and the socialist W whatever, the other so-called left outlets are as bankrupt and as stupid and as ignorant. Why should it be just me noticing these people's bankruptcy? Why isn't there another kind of commentator? Why isn't there a channel other than this one that is actually going through the facts and the evidence? I don't know where I first formed the view about journalism and reporting and about the media and what the media and journalism and reporting should be about. But very early on, I did what I'm saying these others are not doing. And I never launched myself as a career journalist. That is to say, I wrote in return for money. I never did. I never did write in return for money. I write every day, but I never do that in return for money. There is a very serious issue there. And one of the absolutely emphatic vindications, central vindications of my kind of policy has been in the events that have followed my analytical, diagnostic kind of take of the wrongdoings as the wrongdoings were being done. So if I write the equivalent, let's say, what is the number of words just to measure? If I write, say, 10,000 words a day, and it is 365 days a year, multiply that. 10,000 multiplied by 365,000, 65, whatever the final number. So that is the basic rate at which I've been producing every day, quite apart from the other work that I've been doing. And all of that is on the one side and the entirety of Fleet Street on the other side. And Fleet Street includes Oxford and Cambridge and their kind of subordinate members, for example, the so-called Russell Group of universities. All the communications I've had, and I do have, with UK central government departments are based on evidence. And to this day, after decades and decades of my representation of the questions, questionnaires, analytical kind of diagnostic representations to them of their contents, of their policies, of their behavior, and their role and their prejudice and their negligence and their ignorance and their lack of compliance with these obligations imposed on the UK state by the UK's status as an actively signed up member of declarations, treaties, charters, conventions, agreements. And I have not been sent one single item of evidence by anyone. Not from the people who script the letters on behalf of the Prime Minister, whoever the Prime Minister has been, that I have asked questions of, or of the UK central government departments, or indeed of any of the courts, any of the judges or the judiciary. Surely, they must have evidence to refer to, and they can't. They haven't. And this does not include the communications diagnostic that I make regularly to various so-called private organizations, corporates, entities, and of course, to local councils, to members of parliament, and others. So the diagnostic basis of looking rigorously at the contents and the role and the failings and the agenda and the bias and the corruption by and through and of Fleet Street is not just based on what these titles contain or don't contain, but the rest of the whole of the main institutional and individual operational behavior that can be accessed and understood and discussed and diagnosed in society. And the purpose is to tell the truth, and to tell the truth on behalf of those who are denied the truth and those who are kind of gullible people that have been subliminally and directly brainwashed into accepting the lies of the truth. Injustice is not inherited. Life without rights is not inherited. It is created by others in control of making decisions affecting the people who are deprived of the rights and and are subjected to injustice and unjust behavior. For example, this thing about the Windrush generations, there are two sides. One side is that the Daily Mail side, which says the Jamaican criminals or the criminals of Jamaican origin 23 of whom were kind of prevented from being put on the charter flight to Jamaica by the do-gooders, as they say, as Priti Patel has been tutored to say. So these people have been, the 23 have been unfairly treated. That is the line they and their kind of supporters are saying. And Priti Patel, Boris Johnson, etc., are saying that they are criminals and they should be sent to Jamaica, whatever their kind of background in terms of whether they were born in this country or not born in this country. Well, this is the kind of division between the two sides, in short, that has been evident because the mainstream media and Fleet Street has been giving it space. But that's not the issue. Well, that's not the main issue. The main issue is what is going on in Jamaica and what is going on in this country about Jamaica. Let's say this is the topic of this particular issue. It could be another country, another kind of destination. But this time it is Jamaica and the Windrush kind of, all the issues about Windrush generation. If Jamaica is treated as a cultural colony of the empire, British Empire, which officially ended a long time ago. If Jamaica is treated as a cultural colony of the British Empire, then why do people feel unsafe about going to Jamaica, and why do they prefer to stay in Britain mainland? Because the account given in The Guardian yesterday by one alleged kind of person who was sent to Jamaica and who spoke from his detention center or whatever in Jamaica on the phone, says that, it's very, 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 very bad. And he was loudly coughing, The Guardian piece says as well. And he says that the flight was very overcrowded and people were not wearing masks and too many people are too closely set to one another. All in all, Jamaica is not something that people are looking forward to going to, let's say. So isn't Britain failing in its cultural imperialistic kind of role? What has happened to Jamaica since the empire ended officially? Why has Jamaica remained one of the main kind of islands in that part of the world where crime is the main kind of factor? Who is responsible for that? And why an independent Jamaica has been the land or the island for so many Jamaicans murdering so many other Jamaicans? Where is justice? Where is independence in Jamaica? Who cares about Jamaica? And you extrapolate that set of issues and apply that set to the lives of, let's say, young people, say under 30 currently, who are of Jamaican descent, whose parents are Jamaican, whose great grandparents are Jamaican. but who are born here. And look at the knife crime. Look at the gun crime. Who is responsible for looking at these? No, not the London Metropolitan Police, not the British Parliament. They are, but not the first ones. Have the people who have featured now as the supporters of the 23 Jamaican convicted criminals being taken off the plane and protected from that flight to Jamaica, do they have anything to say about the knife crime, about the gun crime, and the criminal behavior that goes on among people murdering or attempting to murder other Jamaicans? If they have not been, why not? And how is that acceptable in the context of the claim these backers, including Naomi Campbell, reportedly making, that sending those people to Jamaica would be unfair? I mean, how is it fair for these people to stay silent about Jamaican young people carrying out murderous attacks on other Jamaicans, other Jamaican young people? Doesn't this silence undermine their widely reported concern for those 23 convicted Jamaican criminals and their claim of Priti Patel being unfair to the Windrush generations, the real Windrush generation people? Who is going to stop this culture of Jamaican young people hating other Jamaican young people so much that they're prepared to murder them? And for what? Why hasn't the British government or the Home Office investigated this? And why hasn't there been an identification of the real cause behind this? And the fact that there hasn't been an identification of the real cause and the action taken to stop it, doesn't that show a kind of laissez-faire attitude towards the people of Jamaican origin or background? I, of course, say that the Jamaican is being used as a shorthand, could include other people from the Caribbean, other Caribbean islands, and of African origin people. For ease of use, I'm using Jamaica as a topical issue to incorporate in the analysis the details that imply involvement of people from other backgrounds, other island backgrounds, etc. We have posted about Sadiq Khan in the last kind of 48 hours, a short kind of description of Sadiq Khan as a stooge, playing a stooge role over his capitulation to the big business that wants to kind of exploit the Bishopsgate goods yard. Now, Sadiq Khan is also used as a kind of nephew Tom in our analysis. And we said the same thing about Priti Patel. And we've said this about others, including Alok Sharma. Rishi Sunak, we have said, but not as often as we have said about Sadiq Khan or Alok Sharma, because Rishi Sunak only has surfaced very recently compared to the others. So, what are the black persons in positions given by the state at every stage, whatever the stage is? Elected councillors, elected mayors, school teachers, various capacities. What do they have to say about this violence? Black children or black school children or black youths just of school age murdering other black children. What have they said? Do they have any role to play? Clearly they have. Otherwise, what are they doing being in positions that are called black school teachers or black head teachers? What is the black doing there in that description? Is that about them having a career? Or is there that being relevant to them providing a perspective that is uniquely only available from them and through them because they're black? And that perspective must be about the fundamental ideal of education, not just schooling. Are they doing schooling or are they doing education? And if they are not doing education, what is their excuse? What is the reason for leaving education out? There is nothing in the papers. Never has been. Whenever they have either the printed Fleet Street or the broadcast BBC or Sky or ITV, whenever they have at the height of a serious kind of series of events of murders, gun crimes and knife crimes, whatever, whenever they have as guests, either, trendily and completely stupidly, some ex-gang members or somebody as experts, or ex-Met police person, mostly of Afro-Caribbean backgrounds. These guests have not contributed to an analysis, to a narrative that we are offering here. And they have not been asked to contribute anything original. Because the broadcasting outlets like ITV's London kind of news, or BBC's equivalent, and The Guardian, for example, or The Times or The Telegraph, Borisgraph, they are not interested in finding the truth, and they're not interested in finding the truthful answers. So we have absolutely no evidence that Fleet Street, this one is the price £2.50 to subscribers, but the general cover price is £3. And it hasn't got really anything about society. It is embarrassingly stupid because it says cabinet backs PM over no deal. Should that be a news item? It's a given. They are saying something that should not be a news item. And the propaganda for the vaccine is serious. Even Jeremy Clarkson is asking Judi Dench to roll up her sleeve and persuade the people in the country to take the jab. And the headline in the Sunday Times so-called editorial about housing crisis says that taking out another loan is no answer to the housing scandal. And it's talking supposedly about Grenfell Tower, and it's talking absolute rubbish. It's not telling the truth, and it's not going to tell the truth anytime soon. We shall be continuing.